everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave and to our colour along in Jewellery Box. It's been such a long time since we've done this, what with the advent of Cavemas and one thing and another, so I'm quite glad to get back to this, and I'm also looking forward to just doing a bit of colouring because I haven't really done much these last few weeks. So let's just go back and remind ourselves where we are. Thankfully, I did write all the colours down because I would never have remembered this after everything, all the festivities that have been going on. So this is where we'd got to, and we'd used our red and our green, and we'd finished off the roses, which turned out really good, and this little bit down here on her cuff as well as her hand. So if I can just cast your mind back, because it has been a while. If I bring you back to our colour wheel, we talked about a tetrad colour scheme, and the colours that we ended up with, if you remember, were yellow, red, purple and green. So having used two of those, the other remaining colours that we have are purple and yellow. Now what I want to do today is make a start on the yellow idea, but what I have done is I have taken it as gold. And what that lets us do is do a little something with her ring, and I'm also going to incorporate that into this ring around here. Again, that just keeps the theme. Now, in order to keep the picture balanced, we want to do something yellow down here, and I figured that this might be some sort of filigree, I don't know, fancy brooch or whatever, so I thought we could put some yellow down there and just see how we go from there. We'll just make a start and see how we get on. Now the colours that I am using today, we are using Polychromos pencils for this. So if you are following along and you're using the same pencils, I have Naples Yellow, which is 185, and that's this one. I have Green Gold, which is 268, and the darkest colour is the Brown Ochre, which is 182. And they are the three pencils that I'll be working with for all the yellow areas. Put this down here. And I'm taking that palest colour as per usual, and I am just tickling a layer all the way over. Now, I am not touching the stone. I am going to leave that until the very end and decide what colour we are going to make it at the end. I think these two little parts here might be facets of the stone rather than fixing, you know, the fixing of the jewellery, so we'll just leave that just now. Before we go any further, we just want to have a think about the light source, which if you remember is coming from the top left if you're following along. And what that means is that these parts here are going to be darker in at the base of the ring, and the likelihood of a highlight on the actual band of the ring is probably not going to be in the centre, it's probably going to be around here somewhere. So we just need to keep that in mind as we work through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these claws, if you like, and I'm just going to put down another layer of the palest colour, which is the Naples Yellow. This is actually one of my favourite colours in the entire Polychromos set. I use it a lot. So I've actually got a wobbly, oh yeah, oh I never break my Polychromos, that makes me sad. So I'm starting just in at this very sort of tight spot here and working my way out, and I'm just going back over it, so you've got a bit of a graduation, and you can just see there no more that I've left the tip very pale because that's where the light is going to hit. So I'm moving on to the green gold. Now this is quite a tight space, so I don't know if we're going to get the full gradient of the three colours here, but again the same thing, I'm just going to start in at the base and pull that up slightly, maybe to about halfway up, and I'm not putting a huge amount of pressure on that pencil. I'm not convinced about this brown ochre. Just having a look at what's there, I think the brown ochre is maybe going to be too yellowy. Let's try a little bit in here. Now just in at the very bottom, you only need a tiny little tickle of this. Yes, that's good. Okay, that's fine. I was hoping it was going to be subtle enough and it wasn't kind of going to come up too brown, and it looks okay. So after using the brown ochre, I'm just going to go back to the Naples Yellow, and I'm just going to go over everything that I've done. And when I come up to the very top here, I'm really lightening my pressure up, so it's only the slightest hint of that yellow that's on the edge, and again that's just to preserve our highlighted area. Okay, so thinking about this part here and what I was just talking about, the highlight on the shoulder, I am going to put another light layer of this Naples Yellow and I'm going to try and leave out the area where I think the highlight's going to be, and it's going to be about a third of the way along. Thinking if it's coming down here, yeah, I think that's about the best we're going to get realistically. So now I'm going to go on to my green gold, and I'm just doing this all as one section. It is far too fiddly to be messing about with the 3 different sections. If you're feeling particularly fussy, then go ahead, be my guest. Right, I'm feeling that this is the highlight looks as if it's sitting in the middle, so I'm going to put more yellow down and bring it higher up there. So can you see where that's changed the dynamic of the highlight? So if I go back now to the green gold, which is our middle colour, and I'm going to bring that quite the way up. There we go, and then I'm just going to add in the brown ochre at the base. Now if you think about where we started in terms of the skin tone as well, we had spent quite a lot of time making this side of the fingers darker, so this fits in, using this dark pencil fits in with what we've already done, and it keeps consistency in terms of the light source, so we are on the right track without too much hassle, which is great. There we go, so you can mess about with that a little bit until you're happy, and I am happy with that. As I say, I really wanted the highlight to sit a bit further to the top left, as is in keeping with the light source. Alright then, so from a distance that looks reasonably good, and we just want to do the ring around the roses while we're in the vicinity. So this is going to be much easier to do a light source on, and this is actually going to be fun as well. I'm going to enjoy this. So take your lightest colour and just get that really nice light layer of the Naples yellow down all the way around this ring. That is what we want to do. Now it's up to you where you start and where you finish. Just keep it light. It doesn't have to be particularly tidy because we're going to be doing quite a lot of work on this with the other pencils over the top. So just as long as you get that colour down and it's nice and light. Now remember as well, if you struggle with a light hand, hold your pencil as far up as you can where you've still got control over it, like I do. I get on much better, and by holding it further back as well, you do tend to use more of the side of the pencil rather than the tip. Now if you're working in small areas and you're not that experienced, you're going to find that difficult to keep control of it. However, it's really good for working on the pressure that you're actually putting on the paper, and for the purposes of this it's perfecto. Right, there we go, so that's us got our lightest layer down. So let's think again about the light source. So the lightest part is probably going to be this quarter here, and the darkest part is going to be this quarter down here. So if I'm working in a circle like this, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see a wee bit better. If I'm working in a ring shape like this, I do tend to split it up, you know, in a sort of pie shape into quarters, just because it's easier to manage and it's easier to try and, you know, figure out what's going on. So in my head just now, what I'm thinking to myself is I want mostly Naples yellow in this section, but I only want it either side because I've already got a layer down, so that is going to act as my highlight, that first layer. So I want more Naples yellow either side of that in this first quarter, which is the lightest quarter. In these two quarters here, I'm going to have a mixture of the Naples yellow and the green gold, because as we come away from where the light source is, it's going to get darker. And down in this last quarter here is going to be a mixture of the green gold and the brown ochre, because that is the furthest point away from the light. So I hope that makes sense, and that you know that's quite helpful for you in future for doing things like this. So let's look at the picture and decide how we're going to do this. There is quite a good cut-off point here where this bud disappears over the top of the ring, so I'm going to use that as a starting point, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting down my next layer of the Naples yellow, and I'm going to decide how much of the highlight that I actually want, you know, how big I want the highlight to be. Now that is entirely up to you, and I think I'm going to make mine quite big, so it's kind of difficult to see on camera, but from there to there I have just left it as that initial layer of this coloured pencil. So I'm going to bring this down. I'm just using a medium pressure, And I start to build up my colour here. And I'm going to take it all the way down to her hand. Just get that second layer down. So I have passed my pie line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the green gold and I'm going to start adding that in down here. And as I'm bringing this up, I'm just thinking about where that pie line is. Now you're only using it as a rough guide. Obviously it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. But it's just to kind of help you along your way when you're doing this. So there we go. I'll maybe bring that up to about there. And just let off the pressure as it goes back into the Naples yellow. So I'm going to go back over the Naples yellow again, because I do want this to stand out, you know, I don't want it to be kind of wishy-washy. So, and I'll just blend that in with the green gold in there. And maybe blend this out a little bit here, because it's quite a sort of harsh line. I don't want that. Okay, good stuff. Moving up to, I'll just turn this around a little bit. Moving up to here, I'm just going to put down my next layer of this. I don't think I want any green gold at this point, because I am roughly in the top quarter of my pie. So just put a second layer down and graduate that out there. Just letting up the pressure as I get towards that highlighted area. Okay, so that looks quite gradual, that's good. I'm happy with that, because you can see ping that that's where the light's coming from. Right, if we move on to this section down here, now this is really my darkest quarter, and that is sort of backed up by the fact that these stems from the flowers are kind of dropping down, so that's going to be really, really dark in there. So I'm going to skip this I'm going to skip the Naples yellow altogether, and I'm going to go straight to the green gold. And in these little sections that are in here, I'm going to put that down like so, and I'm going to go straight in with the brown ochre right over the top of that as well. That is happening. It's in shadow, that's, you know, there's absolutely no doubting that whatsoever. So up here, I'll take my Naples yellow once again and just get that second layer down, and I'm not pressing heavily. Just a nice light layer, because we're going to start working these other two pencils over the top of this now. Okay, so if we take our mid-tone, which is the green gold, we are going to come and work through this darkest quarter of our ring. If this had been, I've just gone over the edge, if this had been a slightly wider ring, I would have worked on making it more three-dimensional with a curve in it, but there really isn't an awful lot of space to do that. If you want to give that a go, feel free, but it's a bit fiddly. It's just not quite wide enough. Okay, so as I come to the top right-hand quarter, I'm letting off the pressure with this green gold pencil, and I'm just going to bring it about halfway round and just let it tail off there. And now I'm going to take my brown ochre, which is our darkest colour, and I'm going to go back down here, and again I'm just going to put a layer of this over the top. I am not pressing hard, and I'm going to bring this up to about here. Now at this point it is up to you to take a step back, have a look and decide if you are happy or not so happy. I'm going to put a little bit of the darkest colour in there as well, and decide whether or not it needs more work, or you want more yellow in a certain place, or, you know, it's entirely up to you. I'll leave that to your discretion, use your eye. And I'm just kind of doing a bit of tweaking here, some parts that I'm not happy. There we go. See that in the light. I did decide to work in natural light. When I came through to the cave earlier, it was still dark, but I thought we had enough light now, but this is kind of proving a bit tricky. Okay, let's have a wee zoom out now and have a look at the two together. Right, that looks okay. Now, as I say, we want to keep a balance, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to this little brooch that's on the cuff here, and we're going to use the similar technique. Again, thinking about where the light source is. Now, this should really, to me, this should be curved round, and the brooch seems to be sitting at an angle like this, just the way it's been drawn. However, we're going to give it the benefit of the doubt. So I'm taking that lightest pencil and I'm going to go over the whole thing. Very, very light hand. If some of you want to colour these circular bits in red as well, feel free. I just didn't want any more red down on this part of the picture. And I'm going to take my next colour now. And it's helpful if you have a sharp point here, because we are going to put that dark line down the inside, of here, and then I'm going to go back and blend it out with the yellow, the Naples yellow. And I am trying to retain a slight highlight at the top here. Now this is proper fiddly work, so it's up to you whether or not you want to do this. Now, it's entirely up to you. And so back in with the brown ochre again. There is not room for 3 pencils in here. If you want to use the green gold instead, that is always an option for you. I've just put a tiny little splodge down here as well. And then I'm just going to blend it out with yellow. There we go. And for this bottom part here, I've got a little bit more room here, so I'm going to put down a little bit of the green gold. Oh, this is messing with my white balance. Wait till I turn this slightly, it'll get on better. So using a bit of the green gold there, and then just a sliver of the brown ochre down the bottom, and again you can blend that out with your yellow and just leave a tiny little bit of white on that top edge there. Now this next part here, helps if you're in the right area, this next part here looks kind of 3D, so I'm going to take the brown ochre and I'm going to run that down this side here, because that is going to be on the dark side of the light source, very similar to up here. Remember, this is our dark part down, so that makes entire sense to have that as dark as you like. And I'm just going to use the other 2 pencils to colour this top part that's flat. So that's a bit of the green gold there, and again just sort of blend it out a bit, make it a bit smoother. This part in here looks as if it's facing towards us, so I'm just going to use the green gold with that, and I'm just going to colour that in almost completely flat, apart from this little part at the top again. You can see how tiny that is. If you can't manage that, then that's okay, don't worry. You can always go in with a white gel pen and put things like that in afterwards if you prefer, which is what I'm going to do with this stone here. Excuse me drinking my tea. Okie dokie, so let's go back up here now, and I'm going back to my brown ochre and just going along the edge of the line art there and getting in there with this Naples yellow. There we go. And the same as I did down here with this part here, so just the green gold and then a little bit of the Naples yellow. On this side, this is going to be darker, so we want to have a light layer of the green gold over everything. So that's just going down on top of your Naples yellow. Because I feel that this should be curved round our cuff, even though it doesn't look like it is, it's drawn. I feel like it should be. So I've now got my brown ochre, and I'm just going to put it in spots where I think the darker part is going to be. And again, I'm keeping quite a light hand, but I'm trying to show you without screwing up the light balance here. We are going to go back in and blend it out a little bit, but we still want to try and keep as light a hand as possible. And right in here it's going to be really dark again, because it's tucked in. Right, I'm just going to go back over this with my Naples yellow, and that's just to smooth out the where I've put the brown down. Okie dokie, looking good. Right, as for this cuff here, I've been having a think about this, and I actually think that the bulk of it should be white and it should remain white. However, I don't think it should all be entirely white. So what I've decided to do is this section here and this little edge here, I am going to add a pop of colour to. So all I want to do is I want to keep my yellow, Naples yellow, and I want, with a really light hand, I am just going to go round these little kind of arch shapes. And it is just it's going to give a hint of colour without sort of taking over, because we do have a reasonable amount of yellow in the picture now. I feel like this is like a sort of frilly, lacy type cuff, and it'll probably be cream, I would imagine. So we might even just add in a little bit of ivory or cream. In fact, that's just what we'll do. Okay, so that's that part there. That goes quite nicely with our brooch. I'm just assuming it's a brooch now. I've just made the decision. Right, let's see if we can dig out a... let's take cream. Cream might be too yellowy. Just having a debate here whether it's going to be cream or ivory. I'll try them out on a scrap piece of paper. Yeah, the cream's going to be too yellow, so I'm going to go with ivory, which is 103. And all I'm going to do is I am going to put in where these creases are. Obviously there's parts of the fabric sitting at different heights, which makes it a bit more complicated, but I am just going to add in a few lines, and again this isn't very technical at all, but it's just to add a bit of definition and a bit of interest to this part of the cuff. And what it'll do is this sort of row of arch shapes along here will stand out more because I've used a bit of the cream. And I don't have to press hard here either. Just add a little bit in here and there. I am not using any sort of scientific method for this at all. I say it's just to give it a bit of interest, and it contrasts a little bit to what's going on elsewhere. Now what we'll do is we'll do the same down here as well, assuming that this is part of the same fabric. So in behind this bow it is going to be a bit darker in there, so let's think about that, and just with a light hand and circular motions, let's just pop in a bit of this cream, ivory, not cream, in these parts where we know that it's going to be a little bit darker. And this is one of these ones as well, you can hardly see that on the camera, but you'll be able to see it on your own paper. You can work away at it and you can come back to it, and if you think it looks a bit patchy or it doesn't look right, you can keep adding to it, because it's such a light shade, and it's really handy for stuff like that. And I quite like using these pencils, or to lighten up another colour as well. They're pretty good. I don't want it to be patchy, but by the same token I don't want it to be all ivory. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. The next colours that we are going for is our purples. Now what we are going to do to this, as we are nearing completion, I just want to finish off down at this little cuff here. So I have got two purple pencils. I have violet, which is 138, and I also have mauve or mauve, depending how you want to pronounce it, which is 249. So I'm only working with 2 pencils here. And what I want to do is I'm going to just use the violet to finish off this cuff here. And I'm going to do these tiny little parts down here. And all I'm going to do is start the violet in the bottom right hand corner, and I'm going to bring it up to nothing as I come up to the top left. This is just really for interest. You're not likely to have a highlight on every single part of this fabric unless it's super shiny, but it's just to make it aesthetically pleasing, because I kind of like doing stuff like that. That's definitely part of my colouring style. I do like to leave the white of the paper. So if you want to colour these all in, or if you want to use the dark and the light colour, feel absolutely free. I personally think it's far too tight a space to be messing about in. So I'll just pop this in. Alright, and in these little archways, what I want to do is I want to put a light layer of the violet in all of them, just like so. There we go. And again, our light source is coming this way, and we have the darkest part of our cuff here, so we're going to do the same with this. So I am taking my darker purple, and I am going to get a good few layers down there, and I'm pressing quite heavily, and I'm just going to blend in a wee bit of the violet at the very top of that section. And we're just going to move round gradually here. So what I've done is I have put a heavier layer down at the bottom of this section and graduated it up to almost nothing. So I'm going to blend in a bit of the violet there, and the next space up I have put a very light layer of the mauve. And again, I'm just mixing them. I'm not, you know, it's not one colour or the other, it's a combination of the two. And this one here, I'm going to do the same again, but I'm only going to do it for half of the arch. So a light layer of the mauve on top of what's there. Mauve. I don't know whether to say a mauve or mauve. There we go, and in with the violet on top of that. So that's quite a heavy layer of the violet now. And as I come towards the light source now, I can make the violet in each of these sections a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter, so you're going to be getting a bit of, you know, colour graduation there, even though it's quite fragmented between the different archways in inverted commas. There we go, that looks alright. I have to say this part looks a lot better in person than it does on the camera. It looks a bit kind of washed out, but it's actually not. Righty ho, now we are motoring on. We might actually get finished today, how exciting. Alright, for the rest of this now, the things that we have to deal with is the slight background that I was going to put on here, and also what colour we want her ring to be. So let's do the background and see how it looks, and then we can decide from there. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to create a halo round the outside of this gold ring that we've coloured in. And I'm starting with the violet pencil, and I'm holding it up at the very top, so I'm going to use the side of the pencil, and all I'm going to do is very lightly in circular motions is I'm going to start building up a little tiny bit of colour. You're letting gravity put the pressure down on the paper. Now this image that you can see that's coming through is actually the image that's printed on the reverse of the paper. It's not the image on the other side, so this might be a bit difficult for you to see, but I'm going to do my best to show you. So you can see there that there's some colour starting to sort of appear on the paper after a little bit of, you know, a little bit of time and a little bit of manipulation. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this all the way around, and I'm only going to bring it out maybe 1.5 centimetres, and I'm going to keep it as subtle as possible. And once I have got that colour all the way around, you can catch me back up, because I'm going to speed this up, it's going to take a while. When you're doing this sort of background, the most important thing to do is to remain patient. There is a tendency to want to rush, particularly if you are like me and are not the most patient person at the best of times. In order to help with this and remain sort of methodical, there's a few things that I do that seem to really help me along. The first is I find it easier, especially when working in a circular motion, to turn the page, and I seem to be able to keep a much more consistent pressure and a consistent rate of colouring, and I basically, it helps me to not lose my patience. So that might be something that's helpful for you. And you can see here, as we're going through this kind of sped up section, I have the book every which way, but I do genuinely find that it helps. The other thing that I find helps as well is something that I already mentioned, is keeping a hold of that pencil really far back and using the side of the pencil. This helps you keep a nice even stroke. And the other thing you don't want to be doing as well is don't sharpen your pencil. You will naturally be creating a point. If you're colouring with the side of your pencil, you will, just through the sheer fact of going back and forth, you will put a point on it. So try not to use that point. Now you can see here I'm switching over onto the darker pencil, which is the mauve. And I'm just putting that right in against the edge of the gold ring that we have done before, and this is what I'm going to pull out, and it's going to get lighter as we come away from that circle. And I'm doing exactly the same thing as I did with the violet pencil, and I'm just going to go up to where that rosebud is sticking up at the top of the page. So I'm kind of back to my pi theorem, if you like, and just doing half at a time again helps with the sort of overall picture. It's just easier to break it down into sections if it's possible, where possible, and it just gives you a bit more of a bite-size area to work with. It's a little bit less overwhelming, but also that as well, it's easier for you to keep the gradient the same all the way around, because you can stop at that point and tweak and adjust. Whereas if you're in an entire unbroken circle, it's not always the easiest to work in sections. So it's actually quite nice that this one is broken up with the hand and that bud as well. You can spend as long as you like. Obviously, being within the confines of the video and even having sped it up, you know, that I've sort of kept it to a minimum just for that purpose. Now you can see here the difference that the mauve makes to the contrast of the gold ring and also the white that lies inside it. It just sets it off nicely, and that is exactly what we want to achieve. So that's halfway round now, and I'm quite pleased so far with how it's going. And I've decided to move over to the other side. So I've just done exactly the same thing again. I've started with that violet pencil, and take a note again about how far up I am holding the pencil, and that is just to get that first light layer down the same way as I do with absolutely everything else when we're colouring. It's just to map out roughly where you want the colour to go and give you a base coat to make a start. And my pencil is quite blunt here, and really all I want to do is just get that coverage down as quickly as possible. I did go in and do a second layer, and it's exactly the same as I did with the other side as well, and that's just again really to sort of flesh out what I'd already put down before I went in with the mauve, because if you just go straight in with the mauve, it's going to be more difficult to get that transition from the mauve to the violet when you start putting your later layers on. So giving yourself a good grounding with your lightest colour first always just helps with blending a darker colour later on, if you like to go from light to dark. Obviously, if you go the other way around, it might be a different thing entirely. So here I am, I'm back to the mauve now. And again, I just wanted to get in those kind of like little nitty gritty bits down at the bottom of the flower stems before I started with that kind of firmer pressure round the outside of the right hand side of the ring. Okay, I'm just back round here to even this up now because I realise that this side's quite dark compared to this side. But you can see what it's done is it's made this circle pop off the page, and that was the idea of having, you know, having some sort of background. Now, if you desire, you can take your lilac pencil and you can work this out further. But the reason that I wanted to show you this is to show you how it can lift something out off the pages, you know, with such a simple and small background, if you like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to bring the colour out to around about here, so it's taking up a lot more of the page. But once again, I shall catch you up when I have finished that. Just while I am toiling away with this background, I was going to take this opportunity to chat to you all, seeing as it's mostly colourists that will watch this video anyway. I am starting the nameplate challenge, which I mentioned in one of my Cavemas videos. And for those of you who missed that, basically I want to complete every nameplate page in all my colouring books in 2019, because I have this strange theory that it's kind of rude to colour a page in a colouring book without having done nameplate page, and I likened it to walking into someone's house without knocking. That's just kind of the way I feel about it. So my question to you just now is that I have 3 books that have no nameplates done in them. One of them is the book that I am colouring in right now, the Jewellery Box by Hanna Karlzon. One of the other ones that I have is Anamorphia by Kirby Rosanes, and the third one is Ticket to Dreams by Karolina Kubikowska. So I am going to let you decide which one that we want to colour the nameplate page in for our next colouring project. So you can either click the poll in the card in the corner just now and vote for your favourite, or you can leave a comment in the box down below as to which one you would like to see coloured first. We will naturally be making our way around all of them, but I would really appreciate your input as to which one you would like to see to get us started. I'm going to run them kind of as half colour and chat, half colour along. I will let people know the colours that I'm using, etc, etc, so that you can follow along if you desire, but it's going to be more of that sort of informal, more relaxed type chattiness, because it's something that you guys all seem to quite enjoy, and it gives me a chance just to witter on as I normally would. So if you would be willing to give me some input, that would be fab. I would really appreciate that, and we can just carry on with our picture here just now and our colour along. I am nearing the end of doing the background. I could have gone on forever, but I'm just really sort of adding the finishing touches here for the purposes of demonstration and the purposes of the video. I would love to see if anybody does a bit more with the background, so feel free, if you have been following along with this, to show me your results on any of my social media, which are all linked in the end card and in the description as well. All right, that is me. I'm quite happy with this background. Now, the one thing we have left to do, I'll just kind of zoom right in so that you can see it, is the ring. And I think we should make it purple because there is very little left in the picture that's not done. And I just feel as if we haven't used the purple. And that will kind of complement this background as well. And again, it'll pop out on this white background. So just giving my violet a little sharpen there. Now, colouring in gemstones doesn't go by the same rules as the, you know, the normal sort of light source, because there is a lot of light refracted and reflected within a gemstone depending on the cut of it. So it is entirely up to you what you want to do with this in terms of shading. And I am going to go for a light shade in here and put the darker shade here at the top, pressing really heavily but leave a highlight, and then I'm going to do the opposite down here. Now I might go in with a white gel pen and add in a few, you know, maybe a sparkle or something. And I'm just going to use the violet there as well. Yeah, so I've got a what I call the wee Uniball signal. It's the 0.7. It's just a bit of a finer point on it. So I'm going to get that going on one of my many post-it notes till it's flowing smoothly. There we go. Right, so if I have a quick zoom in here, down at the bottom I am just going to fill in this part here where I coloured over everything. There we go, that is excellent. And on the ring here, I am just going to go for it. I am going to just put a big flick. Now you do need to make sure that your ink flow is working really well here. And you can see mine is not, there we go. I don't know what is wrong with this pen today, it's usually very reliable. And just get that nice shine. Mine has not turned out well. What I will probably do with this is I'll probably scratch that off and redo it, because the pen seems to be quite clogged, but it's important to get that flicking motion so that you get the sort of tapered off edge from it. If I show you when we're zoomed out though, it will look okay from a distance, but I think, as I say, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to go back in and redo that. And there we have it. That is the finished image. I, for one, am quite proud of it. I like the simplicity of it. I always have liked simple pictures, and I hope you guys have enjoyed following along with me as well. So thank you once again. If you have made it to the end, well done. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time in the cave.